U.S. media reports say Lance Armstrong has admitted to Oprah Winfrey that he took performance-enhancing drugs. It would be the first time the former cycling champ has ever deviated from years of rock-solid denials of the charge of doping. Listen to him in 2005 talking to CNN's Larry King.
I've said it for 7 years. I've said it for longer than 7 years. I have never doped. I can say it again, but I've said it for 7 years. It doesn't help. Why would I then enter into a sport and dope myself up and risk my life again? That's crazy. I would never do that. No way.
On Monday, though, Armstrong spoke at length to Winfrey for a show to be broadcast later this week. The sporting world has been on edge, waiting to hear what Lance would say. Winfrey's network hasn't confirmed whether he made a confession. Armstrong's stories inspired millions. A cancer survivor who won the Tour de France a record 7 times. But as rumors about doping grew into allegations, his sponsors deserted him. Workers at Livestrong, the cancer charity he founded, have also suffered. Armstrong apologized to them on Monday, but there was no mention of illegal doping. CNN sports anchor Pedro Pinto joins us now. What do we know, Pedro, about what he told Oprah? Anything else that you've been hearing?
Well, people who were involved with the interview have signed an agreement, so they're not able to discuss the details of the interview before it airs on Thursday on Oprah Winfrey's network. What we do know, according to a source close to the situation and also to USA Today, the newspaper, is that he allegedly admitted to taking performance-enhancing drugs. We also know that he was very emotional during the interview, and we know the one-on-one interview at his home in Austin, Texas, lasted for about 2.5 hours. There was a lot of pressure on Oprah Winfrey to ask all the tough questions, because ever since the United States Anti-Doping Agency found him guilty of effectively masterminding one of the most successful doping programs in the history of cycling and the history of sports, people have wanted to know where he stands. As you said, he has denied time and time again that he was ever involved in doping. And you mentioned the apology he gave to the Livestrong Foundation. He did that before the interview with Oprah Winfrey, and I can tell you exactly what Livestrong had to say about that. They revealed that Lance offered a sincere and heartfelt apology for the stress that the Livestrong staff have endured because of him. We know that obviously the Livestrong Foundation will continue its work, and Lance wants to distance his face and his image from that if it's affecting the foundation negatively.
And what kind of implications would any confession to doping have on Lance, like in terms of sponsorship and legal action?
Well, he could be forced to give back a lot of the prize money he has won, both to his former teams, to sponsors, even to the Tour de France. And that is a situation that will be examined by all of those parties once it is confirmed that a confession has been made. It's curious, Zain, because as we saw with an interview recorded a few years ago with Larry King, he has been adamant that he is always against any kind of performance-enhancing drugs. But after all the evidence that was brought upon him, he felt perhaps that it was the time to change his stance. As far as legal implications are concerned, even though he did testify, it was over 7 years ago, so that has expired, so he wouldn't face charges of perjury. I would like, though, to recall another statement he made when he's being investigated back in 2005 by a lawyer in the United States. This is what Lance had to say back then.
I've never taken performance-enhancing drugs. How could that have happened?
That was my point. It's not just simply you don't recall.
How many times do I have to say it?
I'm just trying to make sure your testimony is clear.
Well, if it can't be any clearer, then I've never taken drugs.
Well, obviously, since then, Zain, a lot of evidence has surfaced, and he has been stripped of his 7 Tour de France titles. From a personal standpoint, I had a chance to interview Lance a few years ago after he won the Tour de France for the 3rd consecutive time, and I always saw him as a hero. I saw him as kind of a beacon of light in the world of cycling, and I think that's why it's taken so long for him to be brought down, is because of this image he had, and a lot of people were scared to speak out against him.
What has he been doing this whole time since this has happened? Is he just laying low in Texas and just just going out for the odd jog.
Exactly. That's exactly what's happened. We know that Lance Armstrong would like to compete in triathlons, and people say that's one of the reasons why he would confess, because that opens the door to him competing down the line once again in other official events. We know that he's been spending a lot of time in his Austin home, and we also know that he's been quiet. And initially, when the USADA report came out implicating him in this drug ring, he didn't speak, he didn't react, and it was his lawyer who was doing all of that for him. So this is why it's such a big turnaround.
He's
and why
just so believable when he makes those denials, like over and over again. You know, he's so convincing, which is why, you know, it's such a shock. When
it is a shock, even for someone who covers these stories. I personally always wanted to believe that he was innocent, and it is a shock.
Pedro Pinto, thanks so much. Well, let's see what the papers are saying. USA Today's headline says, "Long road to redemption." It says of Armstrong, he had two realistic choices: remain quiet about it or come clean. In Britain, The Independent's got this headline: "The truth about Armstrong is already out there." It says, "We shouldn't forget, not for a moment, that the essential truth is already out in the open." And then take a look at the Daily Telegraph. This is in Australia. Their headline says this: "No trusting the man whose life was built on lies." The comment piece doesn't hold back at all in its criticism and says, "Chances are Armstrong will sound half convincing. He's Pinocchio on pedals. He's been method acting for almost 2 decades."